oh, they're not concerned for my safety. Oh, they think I deserve this. Constant, like, dodging bullets. And it was, you can't offend anybody because then they're going to ruin your career. She looks around and she was like, we want her to teach us to dance. So thank you for joining me. I'm Suhaila, and I'm sharing stories about my life as a professional belly dancer. And I know it sounds very glamorous, but I am here to tell you the realities of it all. Not just culturally, but even just spiritually, all that means. I think that for most people, the idea of being in show business sounds very glamorous. And if you are lucky enough to be able to make a living at it, then it's almost like you're special, or you have a big drive, or you just didn't give up, or you have that tenacity to just keep going, or that you suffer through it. I think for me, I was raised in it. My mother was famous, and she created a world and an environment for me that was very unrealistic, because it was very fantasy based in this country, which was magical as a child. It was great. And I think the realistic aspects were from my father's side of the family, where they were really not happy about me wanting to be a belly dancer. And when I was young, I didn't understand it at all. I just thought they were being really mean and very unprogressive and not very educated, and we're artists and you don't get it. And as I've matured and I think learned so much and been all around the world, I can completely see why Middle Eastern families would be absolutely horrified at the thought of their loved ones going into the dance and the nightlife. So when you are a belly dancer in the Middle East, and I'm going to talk about it from a cultural standpoint. So I'm Middle Eastern and I am dancing in the Middle East. We'll talk about aspects of what that even means outside of the Middle East at another time, but I'm Middle Eastern and I'm dancing in the Middle East, and I should understand the rules. And the rules are, I'm a woman alone, and an unprotected woman, so I'm a woman alone. I am definitely a woman of questionable morals. I want to be a dancer. That means I don't have a lot of modesty, and I am choosing this to make a living, and I'm away from my family. So there's all these, which ties into being unprotected. So even if I was living in the Middle East, and I mean, like, had been born, I was first generation born outside of the Middle East, but even if I had been born in the Middle East and my family was there, it would have been very similar, because you still need to understand, like, your status. Like, status of a belly dancer in the Middle East is really low. It's very, you are very looked down upon socially and status wise, and you're sometimes even compared to being a prostitute. And it's not, it's not a looked upon art form with any dignity. Now, do they absolutely culturally love their belly dancers? Yes. When they're on the stage, oh my goodness, they're such an important part of the social structure, in terms of, they perform at the weddings and the celebrations and the rituals. They are embedded in the ritual of the Middle Eastern culture. Yes, but you have to understand your role. So when I was working in the Middle East, and I was, living in a hotel, and I was actually, this one particular situation was in Lebanon, and I had been working in a Lebanese nightclub in Beverly Hills. And so by the time I got to Lebanon, I was already known. And a lot of the very famous singers in Lebanon knew who I was because they had worked with me in Byblos, and now I was in Lebanon. So it was very exciting because they were like, oh, my friend from America. But what happened is that I'm in this hotel and I'm by myself, and I'm known to be, and you're not by yourself in the Middle East. And men aren't allowed, by the way, to just go up to your hotel room and hang out with you. Like you can in the States. You have your friends come and hang out. No, that is not allowed because prostitution is illegal, and so if that has a prostitution look and feel, and if it quacks like a duck and looks like a so no, it's illegal. So when there was a knock at my door in the early evening, I was so confused because there's no knocks at the door. What would have happened is that my phone would have rang. Let's say they were bringing fresh towels. There would have been a phone call to inform me that housekeeping was going to bring, there's no just knocks, right? And it would have been the female housekeeping or some, even if there was maintenance, they would have not been alone with me. There would have been a whole different protocol for that. So when there was a knock at my door and I got close to the door and I asked who it was, and this famous singer said his name, I was in shock because what happened is all these things went through my head. Like, how did he get up here? And then all of a sudden I realized he was allowed up here because I didn't give him my hotel room number. And then I was like, wait, how could he have been allowed up here? Because it's illegal. Like, he had to have walked by, like all these, he walked by the concierge. Oh, they allowed him up. Oh, they gave him my room number. Oh, they know he's up here. Oh, they're willing for him to be up here. Like, oh, they're not concerned for my safety. Oh, they think I deserve this. Oh, I'm in trouble. And, oh, no one is going to come for me and help me. And I just remember going down this list very quickly in my head and feeling I'm in trouble and I could scream and no one's going to come because maybe he paid everybody off at the front desk. Maybe he's just so famous they, let him go because he promised them tickets to his next show. But I was pretty useless. And so I said, hey, hi, hey. And he was like, open the door. And I was like, no, I can't do that. I'm going to get in trouble. Because I would get in trouble if, the rules were. And he was like, no, you're not. Or, it's going to be fine. Everything's fine. And I was like, no, I'm going to get in trouble. It's not loud. Anyway, to make a long story short, after going back and forth, because I knew, he knew, that I knew, that they knew he was there. And so I was trying to just get him to leave and to just be respectful because this man could just ruin my career, ruin everything. I mean, he was that powerful. And I had already seen him when I first got there because we went to go see a show with my manager and, a group of people. And, he was so happy to see me. And he was married and his wife was pregnant. And then I was so confused when he asked me to run away with him to, Italy for the weekend. And I was like, what? Like, your wife is pregnant? Oh, no. We're going there now? Like, it was just constant, like, dodging bullets. And you can't offend anybody because then they're going to ruin your career. And so you're just like, no, no, thank you. I'm rehearsing and I'm, practicing for my show. And anyway, so I'm behind the store and now he's getting pissed because now I think he's feeling stupid. So now, down the hall, other people are looking out the door and they see this famous person and I'm not opening the door. And so now he's hits the door and he's like, let me in. And I'm like, I can't. He's like, open the door. I can't open the. So he starts literally backing up, running and shouldering the door, like trying to break it down. And so every time he comes up to the door, it like rattles. And I'm like, oh my God, he's going to break this door down. And it's rattling and it's rattling. And so I'm like holding the door and I'm holding the door and I'm holding the door. And then I start sliding down the door and I'm sliding down the door. And then I'm on my back. I'm on my back and I'm holding the door and I'm holding the door with my feet and I'm bracing on the in the hallway like this. And we're bang, bang. And I'm there like that until he decides, and he's pissed, and he's now cussing at me in Arabic. But the funny thing is he's calling me a whore, like, in Arabic, like open the door whore. And I'm just screaming, please, please, like go. I'm sorry I can't open the door. No one's coming to my aid. No one's coming to my rescue. Nope. And then finally it stops. And I'm on the floor with my feet up on the door, and he didn't break it. And I just burst into tears because I don't know how long do you survive that, Yeah. And then I was afraid to go anywhere alone. How do I go back to was he going to be waiting for me in the hallways? Was now it going to be a vengeful situation and he was going to teach me a lesson? Was he going to have to make a point out of me in front of the hotel people? Because then when he went down, he obviously came down very quickly. I don't know. It just made me feel so incredibly vulnerable and so scared. And it just was a good reminder that, right, I'm just the belly dancer, and to remember that where that placement is in the social structure, and I felt really, really alone. So, of course, I didn't let those moments scare me away and change my relationship with my love for my art form. And that's because I've always felt that one of the ways that society tries to control women is to like take that power away, take their autonomy away, take their choices away. And so even though culturally that is understood, like what my role is, like status-wise, culturally, like class-wise, I also felt so much support from the women in the culture. Like, they needed to have me, or what I represented, not me literally, but what I represented as ideas and hope and a place to escape to as well. And I felt that. Like I always felt like even when I went on stage, the first thing I did is look at all the women. The first thing I did is open up my eyes and my gaze and my smile. Like, this is about us. And that was really important to me. And, I remember this one party I did. I did this private party, this really, well-to-do family house. And as I was walking, I finished my show and I bowed, and I'm walking back to the bedroom that was given to me for my changing, and my mom was with me actually, and she's in the room and she's walking a little bit ahead, and then she gets there, and I notice that there's this woman kind of walking behind me and kind of fast, and and I don't know what it is, but like when someone starts to chase you, like you run, right? So all of a sudden I felt like I was being chased, and and I start to run, and I pick up my skirt and I start to run. And I say to my mom, open the door. She opens the door, and then we get inside the door. We close the door, and then she's banging on the door. And I thought, this is so weird. And she was the wife of a very well-known Middle Eastern man in the community. And I thought, what would she want with me? And I was smiling at everybody. I swear I wasn't flirting with her husband. I got all these things go through my head. And meanwhile, so then, my mom goes to the door and she opens the door and she was like, can I help you? And she was like, I want to talk to your daughter. And my mom was like, about what? And she goes, and she looks around and she was like, we want her to teach us to dance. And my mom was like, come in. And then my mom shuts the door. And then her and my mom started chit-chatting and they were like BFFs like that because it was immediate. My mom understood, oh, got it. And so what ended up happening is they hired me once a week. And each of these women, they were the wives of very, very well-to-do families, but they every week they would have it in a different home, and they would host the belly dance class for the week. And these women got together and had so much fun, and they were able to dance together and laugh together. And then it was traditional too that you have to have lunch afterwards, and the food was slamming. And my mom and I would get to stay, and they just want to chit chat and hang out with us. And we were one of the girls, and we were part of them. But we were hidden. It was hidden. It was all in the house, and it was all in the home, and it was able to be for them, this was their therapy. For them, this was a way of being a part of the culture, but having a therapeutic process and just expressing themselves. And they even asked me can you get us some costumes? And I was like, yeah. So I went and I asked the people that I knew that were selling costumes to give me some costumes, and I brought costumes, and they each bought 1 or 2 or 3, and it was their dress up, and they would hide their costumes from their husbands, but they would put them on and dance for each other, do solos for each other, and the screaming and yelling and support and the clapping was unbelievable. And then they would, hide their costumes, and it was their moment to just play belly dancer. And I loved it because I got to watch really this relationship that these women wish they had, with the culture, the aspect of the dance in terms of the culture, and how they saw themselves within it, and how free they felt, but then how oppressed they felt, the pendulum. And then the interesting thing is that these families would come into the club, right, and see me dance on the weekends. And we had this secret. We had this little secret together. And so we would look at each other, and we couldn't let on it was a little secret club, but we'd look at each other and I'd be like, when no one was looking, it would be our little secret, we just knew. But I couldn't, I had to keep my place and keep my space, and I couldn't go up and go, hey girl, wasn't class fun on Wednesday? Yeah, no. You had to keep it on the down low. It was wonderful. Those were the moments I really lived for. And my mom would come with me, and it was it was like girls club. It was great. So those were some of my favorite moments, right? Being able to be with the women. And I saw it in my own family too, because my aunties and my cousins would wait for the men to leave in the morning, eyes down, just making breakfast. Everybody was quiet until the men all left, and then the curtains would close, and they'd move the coffee table over to the side, and they would dance for each other. So I grew up like this. I understood this whole idea. I understood. So I understood this secret world of dance and sisterhood and hanging out. I wasn't prepared for a certain level of I don't even know what to call it, because it's so it kind of took me off guard, and there's not much that could culturally take me off guard. But I think that when we start to play with ideas of gender norms and expectations is when I think things get very even more underground. That was a surprise for me. So I was dancing. And some of the things that the waiters would do is sell my telephone number. So I would have to like change my telephone like every 2-3 months. I'd have to change my number. Now this is a time before cell phones, so we had like the landlines and we had these answering machines and whatever. So I'd have to change my number like every 2-3 months. But what happened is this one time, I'll never forget, I came home from a club, and when I got home, there was a message on my answering machine, and it was this voice in this very intense, heavy Arabic accent telling me that they loved the costume that I wore that night, and they wanted me to wear it again the next night. And there was something really sexy about the voice, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I don't know, maybe. And I've never done anything like this. So it was kind of like if I wore the costume, then I was accepting the communication. So the next night, and they didn't leave a name. And this voice was a very sexy voice. And the next night, I actually wore the costume that he said on the machine to wear. And I'm looking around the club, and no one's like giving me the cue, like, hey, yeah, thanks for wearing the costume. I said, I'm looking. No one's giving me the cue. And then I was like, oh, maybe they're not here, right? So then the next day, the same voice, but a new message telling me how beautiful I was and that they wanted me to wear now the green costume. And I was like, oh, so now we're playing this game. And now I think it's kind of sexy. And so I decided to wear the green costume because now I'm playing. So then I wear the green costume that night, and I can't tell. I'm looking around like, give me a cue, give me something. Nothing. Then I find out. So then the next night I hear the voices going again on my machine, but in the background I hear that he's listening to the film Basic Instincts. So he's listening to Basic Instincts, and he's calling me, and he's leaving on my machine what color costume he wants me to wear the next night. So I'm like, oh, okay, Basic Instincts. And so the next night I wear the costume, I wear the color, right? And then I notice there weren't many tables in that night. And I notice this table, and the table's full of mostly women, and it's women that look very, I would say, like if I was to say what area of the very North African, and then there's this, really elegant, tall man with all these women and some other men, but it was an unusual configuration. Is what it was. So the table was an unusual configuration because usually you don't have that many women with one man. Like, it's weird. And there were a couple other men, but you could tell they were not necessarily in the same friend level or class level. So it was weird. It was like, what was happening? Anyway, this man was very beautiful, elegant man with short, slick back hair and the Armani suits, and just chiseled and just very handsome. And so I realized, oh, that's the man for sure. Because there was a nod, there was an acknowledgement. So then what started happening is, for about a week, there was a message on my machine of what to wear. I would wear it, and then we'd be eyeballing each other. And he'd be eyeballing me, I'd be eyeballing. And then there was, and there was this fun to it, and there was this innocence to it, and there was a feeling of playfulness, and there was nothing vulgar about it, and there was almost this curiosity on my part. So then one night, and what would happen is the club would actually also be reserved for after hours. So, the club closed at 2, but if somebody bought out the club and wanted you to do another show, that was and you were making a lot of money for those buyouts for after hours. So that was happening too in this situation and scenario. And I felt like, wow, this person really just wants, a lot of, they're just a lover of the art. So then one night, I would always go and wash my hands after my show because I have a tradition of needing to wash my hands after my show. I was in the bathroom and I'm washing my hands. And all of a sudden, the door flings open and it's like this, poof. And I'm kind of startled and I shut the water off. And all of a sudden, this line of the women at his table come in. Like line. And I'm a little confused and I'm kind of surrounded by these women. And then he comes in and the lights go out.